Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news. Here are the headlines.
A massive stampede at a densely packed Jewish pilgrimage site killed at least 44 people in northern Israel, blackening the country's largest COVID-era gathering.
India on Friday posted another global record for daily coronavirus infections, pushing worldwide cases past 150 million as a pandemic that has killed almost 3.2 million worldwide continues to wreak devastation.
In environment news, nearly all of the world's glaciers are losing mass at an ever-increasing pace, contributing to more than a fifth of global sea level rise this century, according to unprecedented research released on Wednesday.
And for tech and e-commerce, Colossus Amazon on Thursday reported that its profit in the recently ended quarter tripled as online sales boomed.
First to Israel, where a massive stampede at a densely packed Jewish pilgrimage site killed at least 14 people in the northern part of the country, blackening the country's largest COVID-era gathering. The nighttime disaster struck as tens of thousands of pilgrims were gathered in Meron at the site of the reputed tomb of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai at the festival, attended by tens of thousands of Jewish pilgrims. Take a look.
Just finished treating one of Israel's worst disasters, a terrible disaster of people who came to celebrate Lag BaOmer at Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and unfortunately were literally crushed to death. Many people were hurt, injured, and killed here, and the volunteers behind us here right now are being gathered together for an immediate debrief on the psychotrauma unit due to the fact that they were exposed to very difficult sites that we haven't seen here in Israel since the worst days of terrorist wave back at the beginning of the 2000s.
The pilgrimage was the largest public gathering since the pandemic broke out, with reports of 3 times more participants, including children, than authorized by police. Initial reports indicated the carnage began when a section of stadium seating collapsed but rescue. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a heavy disaster and said he was praying for the injured. Yehuda Gottlieb, one of the first responders from the United Hatzalah, said he saw dozens of people fall on top of one another during the collapse. A large number of them were crushed and lost consciousness. Israel has fully vaccinated more than half of its 9.3 million population against the coronavirus, but restrictions on massive public gatherings remain in place to stem the spread of the virus. Authorities had authorized 10,000 people to gather at the site of the tomb, but organizers said more than 650 buses had been chartered from across Israel, bringing 30,000 pilgrims to Meron. Around 5,000 people had been deployed to secure the event.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said a stampede that killed at least 44 people at a Jewish pilgrimage site on Friday was one of the worst disasters in Israel's history. Take a look.
אסון מירון הוא מן האסונות הכבדים ביותר שפקדו את מדינת ישראל. אנחנו דואבים על הנספים, ליבנו עם המשפחות וגם עם הפצועים שאנחנו מייחלים להחלמתם המלאה. אני חייב גם לציין שהייתה פה פעולת חילוץ מהירה של המשטרה וכוחות החילוץ והביטחון, ואנחנו אסירי תודה להם, הם מנעו אסון גדול בהרבה. אנחנו נערוך בדיקה יסודית, רצינית ומעמיקה כדי להבטיח שאסון כזה לא יישנה.
And for some reason, the police had closed the gate that was leading out down some stairs where people could have vacated the premises, people that were getting and feeling too much pressure. However, they were just crushed and pushed right up against the gate. The gate eventually broke and people fell over it, and then, but just from the sheer pressure of people behind them, they were crushed. And unfortunately, even the emergency services people that were here, they were also being crushed. They were also trying to get people out at the same time. But just the sheer volume of people that were there, they couldn't reach everyone on time, and they couldn't leave quick enough because this gate was closed, which is a real tragedy for Israel, for the Jewish people, and for everyone. I was just shocked. I was shocked because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand what was going on because it was just too many people to know what was going on. Just you heard a lot of people screaming and a lot of people trying to run to see what it was. So I was just shocked. I just, you know, and then they started carrying bodies out on stretchers. It was just, I've never seen that here. I've been here for 20 years. I've come here for 20 years for this festival, and I've never seen anything like this at all. And it was horrifying, actually. And it took me a long time. I'm still a little bit shocked from it.
An investigation has been opened by Israel police into the cause of the accident. German Chancellor Angela Merkel extended her heartfelt sympathy to Israel. The ecstatic crowds had packed the Mount Meron slope in defiance of COVID-19 warnings by health officials. It was the largest public gathering since Israel started lifting coronavirus restrictions on the public weeks ago. Witnesses said people were asphyxiated or trampled in a passageway starting at around 1 a.m., some going unnoticed until the PA system sounded an appeal to disperse.
India today posted another global record for daily coronavirus infections, pushing worldwide cases past 150 million as a pandemic that has killed almost 3.2 million worldwide continues to wreak devastation. Take a look.
The crisis in Delhi is very, very large as compared to Haryana. It appears that half of Delhi is in COVID. In every home there is a COVID patient. So I request central government that please don't follow Delhi and Haryana. One nation, one oxygen. Every person should be provided with maximum support.
I'm speechless about this situation, what's going on, and how people are suffering. Their family members are dying in front of them, in their hands, just due to lack of infrastructure and lack of basic necessities, which is not available in hospitals. And it's a complete blunder, I must say, and no one should face such issues. No one is getting oxygen to even the basic needs. They are dying for basic needs, and families are it's a complete mess, and it's a blunder. And I would personally pray that no one sees such situation ever in their life.
India recorded another 385,000 cases in the past 24 hours, a new global record, and almost 3,500 deaths, according to official data that many experts suspect fall short of the true toll. India's hospitals are being stretched to breaking point by an explosion in cases, with people dying outside their doors or at home due to lack of beds, drugs, and oxygen. The Delhi crematorium is dealing with so many bodies from India's COVID nightmare that it has been forced to expand into an adjacent car park. Crematoriums are working overtime, their chimneys cracking, and iron frames melting from constant use. Wood is reportedly in short supply in places, and some families are told to bring their own to burn. Many crematoriums and graveyards say the official death toll from the virus comes nowhere close to reflecting the additional number of bodies they are dealing with. More than 40 countries have already committed to sending medical aid to India, with the U.S. a Super Galaxy military transporter carrying more than 400 oxygen cylinders, other hospital equipment, and nearly 1 million rapid coronavirus tests arriving in New Delhi today.
Also struggling to inoculate a vast country facing a surge in cases is Brazil, which has one of the highest mortality rates in the pandemic at 189 deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. Take a look.
Eu acho que se cada um fizer a sua parte, eu acho que logo todos vamos sair dessa e isso vai servir de aprendizado para o futuro, né? Para a gente saber se cuidar, tomar mais cuidado.
Agora voltou ao normal, tá melhorando, mas tá aquele negócio, tá fecha, abre, aí prejudica aqui, mas tá indo direitinho, tá melhorando.
E sim, atrapalhou muito pra mim, porque no caso hoje em dia tá tudo caro, eu tô desempregado, moro com a minha avó, mas aí é fogo, mano. A pandemia atrapalhou tudo, desestudo também, a escola parou, graças a Deus terminei o estudo.
Brazil's death toll in the coronavirus pandemic surpassed 400,000 Thursday as the country struggled to secure enough vaccines, and the Senate investigated whether President Jair Bolsonaro's government has exacerbated the crisis. The health ministry reported 3,001 COVID-19 deaths in the past 24 hours, bringing Brazil's overall toll to 401,186. Second only to the United States. Experts blame the latest surge partly on the Brazil variant of the virus, a mutation that emerged in or around the Amazon rainforest city of Manaus in December. But many have also pointed the finger at the administration of President Jair Bolsonaro, which now faces investigation from the country's Senate into whether there was criminal neglect in its handling of the pandemic. Around 28,000 people have received, or 28 million people have received a first COVID-19 vaccine dose, just over 10% of the population. In a bit of good news, though, the first million doses of the Pfizer vaccine were due to arrive Thursday evening, adding to Brazil's two current options, the AstraZeneca vaccine and Chinese-developed CoronaVac.
In a related news, Brazil's health regulator said its decision to reject the Russian-made Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine was based on the developer's own data, after the latter threatened to sue for defamation. The spat came 3 days after Anvisa announced it had denied the request from several states to import Sputnik V, saying its experts had flagged uncertainties about the jab. Take a look.
A Anvisa foi acusada de mentir, de atuar de maneira antiética e de produzir fake news sobre a identificação do adenovírus replicante em documentos que tratam da vacina Sputnik V, e é um retrato temporal. Ele pode ser modificado. Não estamos fechando porta a absolutamente nada. Esses dados apresentados podem ser revistos, corrigidos e reapresentados, mas a decisão do regulador é o retrato do momento. E no momento, naquela segunda-feira passada, não nos foi possível aprovar, o que nos deu grande tristeza.
Brazilian regulators' decision Monday to deny emergency use authorization for the vaccine has blown up into an all-out international row, with Sputnik V's makers accusing them of knowingly spreading false and inaccurate information without testing the vaccine themselves. The issue centers around an adenovirus vector, a virus that normally causes mild respiratory illness, but in vaccines is genetically modified so that it cannot replicate, and edited to carry the DNA instructions for human cells to develop the spike protein of the coronavirus. This trains the human immune system to be prepared in case it then encounters the real coronavirus. The Sputnik V vaccine uses two different adenovirus vectors to accomplish this task. Adenovirus type 26, 8026 for the first shot, and adenovirus type 5 or 85 for the second shot. Now, according to a slideshow uploaded online, scientists at Anvisa Brazil's regulators said they tested samples of the booster shot and found it was replication competent, meaning that once inside the body, the adenovirus can continue to multiply, and that they added this had likely occurred because of a manufacturing problem called recombination, in which the modified adenovirus had gained back the genes it needed to replicate while it was being grown inside engineered human cells in a lab. The Russian Direct Investment Fund, or RDIF, which markets the Sputnik V vaccine abroad, rejected Anvisa's comments, saying the shot's safety and efficacy had been assessed by regulators in 61 countries, which approved it for use.
In other news, 2 Myanmar Air Force bases came under rocket attack on Thursday, according to the military, as the country grapples with violence in the wake of the February 1 coup. Myanmar has been in turmoil since the general seized power, ousting civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi and unleashing a wave of near daily street protests calling for a return to democracy. Security forces have sought to quell the unrest with a brutal crackdown on protests, with more than 750 civilians killed, according to a local monitoring group. Fighting has also flared up between the military and Myanmar's numerous ethnic rebel armies, some of which have backed the protest movement and sheltered activists on the run from the junta. A military spokesman said air bases in the central cities of Magwai and Mektila came under rocket fire early on Thursday morning, but no damage was done. It is not clear who was behind the attacks, but the military has launched airstrikes in recent weeks against the Karen National Union, or KNU, one of the leading ethnic rebel armies. The KNU, which holds territory along the border with Thailand, on Tuesday attacked and razed an army post, prompting the military to respond with airstrikes. The surge in clashes between the military and ethnic rebels has prompted some observers, including the UN, to warn that the country's crisis could spiral into a broader conflict. Some 756 civilians have been killed and more than 4,500 arrested in the military's crackdown on protests. This, according to the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, or AAPP, a local monitoring group.
Meanwhile, the World Food Programme's Deputy Country Director in Myanmar, Marcus Pryor, said an estimated 3.4 million people could fall into worrying stages of food insecurity over the next 6 months and potentially require assistance. Let's listen in.
It's been a very difficult few months for many people. It's true that there has been significant out-migration from Yangon in particular, but also that many of the factories are currently closed or operating at a very low level, that the port is operating at a very low level as well, and the banking system is semi-paralyzed, and it's not uncommon to see people queuing in long queues simply to have access to cash. And this is also having an impact on people's ability to transfer cash through money transfers, both within Myanmar and coming into Myanmar from abroad. So this all added up to a situation of real concern, and one where WFP has estimated that over the next 6 months, as many as 3.4 million people could fall into worrying stages of food insecurity and potentially require assistance from ourselves or other actors.
Myanmar, already hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic, was plunged into turmoil when the military seized power on February 1, ousting the civilian government of Aung San Suu Kyi. The United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, said that by early 2022, as many as 25 million people, or nearly half the population could be living below the poverty line. UNDP Administrator Akim Steiner said the crisis could reverse progress made since 2005, which has seen Myanmar have the number of people living in poverty.
In other news, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio said Thursday that the city hopes to fully reopen on July 1st. The mayor did not specify exactly how or when pandemic restrictions would be lifted, which is actually a decision for New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo, with whom he has a difficult relationship. For his part, Cuomo said making projections was irresponsible, but hoped that the Big Apple might be able to end restrictions earlier. Take a look.
Good morning, everyone. Well, good news today as we move forward with a recovery for all of us. It's time to set a goal for a full reopening in New York City, and that goal is July 1st. We are ready to bring New York City back fully on July 1st. All systems go because you've earned it. We're going to keep working hard every day to make this city safer and safer, but what you have done, everyday New Yorkers, what you have done is the reason I can make this announcement today. Now we can see that light at the end of the tunnel. What does it mean? It means we get to go back to so many of the things we love. It means so many jobs get to come back, and soon. It means that the things that make New York City special will be clearer than ever this summer.
I am reluctant to make projections because I think they're irresponsible. July 1. You have May, you have June. You know, what happens in May, what happens in June? I would like to get the reopening, hopeful reopening date before that. I don't want to wait that long. I think if we do what we have to do, we can be reopened earlier.
Been subject to various restrictions since the coronavirus first engulfed the city in March last year, going on to kill around 32,000 people. Some 6.4 million doses of the vaccine have been administered in the Big Apple, according to city figures. Around 2.4 million New Yorkers out of 8.5 million have been fully vaccinated. The goal is to reach 5 million by the end of June, said the mayor. Cuomo has loosened a number of restrictions in recent weeks, allowing restaurants, stadiums, cinemas, and performance venues to reopen with limited capacity. Broadway theaters are not expected to reopen until September. Despite the vaccination drive, a vast majority of New Yorkers continue to work from home and offices remain deserted.
Jailed Hong Kong democracy activist Joshua Wong pleaded guilty alongside 3 others on Friday to joining a banned candlelight vigil for victims of China's Tiananmen Square crackdown. Take a look. The annual June 4 vigil had been held in Hong Kong for the last 3 decades, drawing massive crowds, but it was banned for the first time last year by police, citing the coronavirus situation. Tens of thousands defied the ban and massed at the vigil's traditional site in Victoria Park. And since then, prosecutors have brought charges against 24 prominent activists who showed up at the vigil, the latest in a string of criminal cases that have ensnared the city's beleaguered democracy movement. At a pretrial court hearing on Friday, Wong pleaded guilty alongside district councilors Lester Shum, Tiffany Yuen, and Janelle Yung. Unlawful assembly charges can carry up to 5 years in prison. Wong, one of the city's most prominent activists, is currently serving a jail sentence for taking part in a protest during the months of huge and often violent democracy rallies that rocked Hong Kong back in 2019. Shum and Yuen, meanwhile, were already in custody on national security charges, which Wong also faces.
In other news, Indonesia said Friday it will salvage the submarine that sank off the coast of Bali as grieving relatives paid their respects to the dozens of crew killed in the disaster. Authorities had yet to confirm if they would try to haul up the Nanggala 402 from the seafloor after it was spotted cracked in 3 pieces. The Navy on Friday said it was waiting on the arrival of 2 ships, including a vessel sent by China that are equipped with handle deep sea salvage operations. On Friday, victims' families cast flower petals from a Navy ship into waters where the sub went down as part of a remembrance ceremony. Many wept and hugged as one could be heard saying, "Bye bye, Daddy," while a couple of relatives collapsed as they were overcome with grief. The submarine, one of 5 in Indonesia's fleet, disappeared last week while it was scheduled to take part in live torpedo training exercises. The crew asked for permission to dive, and it lost contact shortly after.
Nearly all of the world's glaciers are losing mass at an ever-increasing pace, contributing to more than a fifth of global sea level rise this century. That according to unprecedented research released on Wednesday. Take a look. Now, glaciers, vast bodies of frozen water that sit above ground, have been melting fast since the middle of the 20th century, but until now, the full extent of ice loss had only been partially understood. An international team of researchers has, for the first time, observed all of Earth's some 220,000 glaciers, excluding the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, to properly evaluate the amount and rate of melt over the past 2 decades. Analyzing images taken by NASA's Terra satellite, they found that between 2000 and 2019, the world's glaciers lost an average of 267 billion tons of ice each year. And that's enough water to submerge Switzerland under 6 meters or 20 feet of water every single year. But the team also found that the rate of glacier melt had accelerated sharply during the same period. Between 2000 and 2004, glaciers lost 227 billion tons of ice per year, but between 2015 and 2019, they lost an average of 298 billion tons each year. Now, this glacial melt has contributed to 21% of sea level rises in the study period, the researchers said, equivalent to 0.74 millimeters a year. The study published in the journal Nature found that the fastest melting glaciers were situated in Alaska and the Alps. The authors also expressed concern about the retreating mountain glaciers in the Pamir Mountains, the Hindu Kush, and the Himalayas, which provide water for more than 1.5 billion people.
Using experimental cloud brightening technology and introducing heat-tolerant corals could help slow the Great Barrier Reef's climate change-fueled decline by up to 20 years, Australian scientists said Thursday. The reef faces precipitous declines in coral cover over the next 5 decades due to intense pressure from climate change, a study published in the peer-reviewed journal Royal Society Open Science said. Climate change is causing marine heat waves, more intense cyclones, and flooding, all of which are damaging the health of the reef. But ambitious human interventions combined with strong global climate action could slow the rate of decline, said Condi, a senior research scientist at the government's science agency, CIRO. Condi and his co-authors modeled the potential impact of interventions such as cloud brightening, which was first trialed by scientists on the reef last year. The technology sends salt crystals into the air, making clouds reflect more sunlight to cool waters around the reef. They also modeled expanded measures to control the predatory crown-of-thorns starfish, which consume the corals and proliferate when bleaching forces bigger fish to leave an area. Condi said the results suggest that combinations of interventions may delay decline of the Great Barrier Reef by 2 decades or more. The Great Barrier Reef has already suffered the 3 mass coral bleaching events in 5 years and lost half its coral since 1995 as ocean temperatures have climbed, according to separate research.
In other news, 2 children are among 3 people confirmed killed by a landslide at a Chinese-backed power plant on Indonesia's Sumatra Island, according to authorities, with fears that the toll would rise. Heavy rains pounded the area in North Sumatra on Thursday evening, and that triggered the deadly torrent. The head of the search and rescue agency in provincial capital Medan City said they're still searching for 9 more who were missing. And among them are 3 staff working at the Batang Toru hydropower facility, including 1 Chinese national, feared buried beneath a mountain of mud and debris. The employees were checking on the area over concerns that heavy rains could trigger landslides when disaster struck. According to Fairman Tofik, spokesman for plant operator PT North Sumatra Hydro Energy, fatal landslides and flash floods are common across the Indonesian archipelago during the rainy season. We have more news for you. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back to the news. The Eurozone economy fell into a second recession in less than a year in the first quarter. Data showed on Friday as slow vaccinations and pandemic lockdown stopped a rebound. The data was in stark contrast to the U.S., where the economy roared forward in the same period, posting annualized growth of 6.4%. China has also turned the corner from the coronavirus pandemic with an 18.3% explosion in gross domestic product growth on an annual basis. Europe has been hit hard by a second and third wave of the coronavirus pandemic, with multiple attempts to reopen the economy cut short by the new outbreaks. More recent data has given Europeans confidence that the recession will be short-lived, however, with surveys showing that manufacturing is now booming. And with the vaccination campaign finally getting into swing, pent-up demand is expected to follow as Europeans begin to spend more in shops, at reopened restaurants, and on tourism.
Japan's biggest airline, ANA, reported its worst ever annual loss today, but predicted a rebound to profit this financial year, with its vice president seeing light at the end of the tunnel after the pandemic. For the past year to March, ANA Holdings logged a record net loss of 404.6 billion yen or 3.72 billion US dollars, compared with net profit of 27.6 billion yen in the previous 12 months. The loss was smaller than the firm's earlier projection after it sought to cut costs in areas from personnel and fuel to airport usage fees and retired some aircraft sooner than planned. But it expects to see a 3.5 billion yen net profit for the year to March 2022 as the coronavirus disruption that has battered the aviation industry worldwide begins to ease. ANA said vaccination efforts worldwide should help boost demand for aviation this year. For the year to March 22, the firm expects to see sales of 1.38 trillion yen, up 89.4%.
Meanwhile, tech and e-commerce colossus Amazon on Thursday reported that its profit in the recently ended quarter tripled as online sales boomed. Total revenue soared to 108.5 billion, an increase of 44% from the same period a year earlier, as the pandemic revved a trend of shopping online instead of in real-world stores. Profit in the quarter was $8.1 billion compared with $2.5 billion in the first 3 months of last year. Amazon shares jumped more than 5% in aftermarket trades. The results marked the latest blowout results from big tech firms this week, including Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, and Google parent Alphabet, which have been delivering critical goods and services during the pandemic. Analyst Nicole Perrin at eMarketer said Amazon has been growing its digital ad revenues in addition to its online sales and cloud business.
Total global spending on coronavirus or COVID-19 vaccines is projected to reach $157 billion by 2025. And this will be driven by mass vaccination programs underway and booster shots expected every 2 years. That according to a report by U.S. health data company IQVIA Holdings Incorporated released today. According to a Business World report, IQVIA, which provides data and analytics for the healthcare industry, said it expects the first wave of COVID-19 vaccinations to reach about 70% of the world's population by the end of 2022. Booster shots are likely to follow initial vaccinations every 2 years, according to the report, based on current data on the duration of effect of the vaccines. A White House official said earlier this month the U.S. is preparing for the possibility that a booster shot will be needed between 9 to 12 months after people receive their first full inoculations against the coronavirus disease. Pfizer Incorporated has also said boosters may be needed within 12 months. Vaccine spending is expected to be highest this year at $54 billion, with massive vaccination campaigns underway around the world. It is expected to decrease after that eventually to $11 billion in 2025 as increased competition and vaccine volumes drive down prices. That according to Murray Aitken, a senior vice president at IQVIA.
In other news, Germany's economy shrank 1.7% in the first quarter of 2021 as rising coronavirus infections forced shutdowns to be extended. Worse figures than elsewhere in Europe, according to official data showed on Friday. The coronavirus crisis caused another decline in economic performance at the beginning of 2021, the Destatis Federal Statistics Agency said. This affected household consumption in particular, while exports of goods supported the economy. Analysts surveyed by FactSet had expected a smaller contraction of 1.5%. The weak start to the year in Europe's largest economy stands in stark contrast with the 0.5% expansion in gross domestic product or GDP recorded in the fourth quarter of 2020 before more contagious virus variants upended Germany's bounce back.
Members of the Indian diaspora in Singapore are coordinating efforts to help their homeland as a relentless wave of new cases swamps the country. Take a look.
And the right specification, we will have, let's say, 10 to 15 beds only. The fact that, one of my family members, very close family members, got affected with COVID. She's still going through it. And we had to arrange different kind of resources like a medical nurse, oxygen cylinder, concentrator for her. And through that process, I realized that we could still arrange it because we are privileged, we can afford it. But there are many people who cannot do that because they do not have money, they do not have access to resources. And I could help them get those resources. So that's where, and that's how I got involved in the campaign. I said that generally what we used to do was financially contribute, and we used to think our work is done. But this is something, unprecedented kind of a situation. It's not those kind of campaigns where you can just contribute, somebody on the ground will take care of it and do that. I think
as a first generation immigrant to Singapore, we feel very blessed to live in a country where things work well and, we are safe. But we also, having moved here at an age where we very well understand the challenges and problems on the ground, I just feel there's no option to sit and watch if a disaster like this unfolds. We all have families back, so the helplessness comes from both sides. How do we help those who are very needy, but also how do we help our own families in a way? They are also exposed. We've all lost friends and family. Everyone I know has lost friends and family.
So can you explain to me what will be the life?
Devgan has all but abandoned her day job as she and a loose collection of overseas volunteers scramble to locate desperately needed supplies for COVID-19 stricken family, friends, and strangers in India. From her apartment in Singapore, Devgan spends hours each day fielding frantic appeals for help on WhatsApp, phoning suppliers, and scouting for desperately needed drugs and oxygen. Devgan's WhatsApp volunteer group has grown to some 257 members, mostly Indians in Singapore, who have become inadvertent experts at sourcing supplies. And they've also raised 100,000 Singaporean dollars or $75,000 US and sent at least 60 oxygen concentrators to India. Another 200 machines have been ordered, mostly from China. And with the help of an NGO in Delhi, they have built up a network to link people with plasma donors, remdesivir, food, COVID-19 tests, hospital beds, doctors, and ambulances.
So we only left with a little bit of money as of now, distributed woolens to children.
Meanwhile, community-run stalls offering free food to the needy have multiplied across the Philippines, with many struggling to feed their families as coronavirus restrictions bite and government help falls short. Street sweeper Juliet Reyes regularly picks up fruit and vegetables from curbside food pantry in the capital, Manila, where a recent lockdown to contain a surge in infections threw hundreds of thousands out of work. Take a look.
Sobrang halaga po to, sir, kasi malaking tulong na rin po to sa akin po, sir. Lalo po na, ang swerte nga po ako rito, dito po natapat yung aming nahinga ng tulong po. Kaya, laking pasasalamat ko po talaga, sir. Wala may nagbigayan po rito ng tulong. Kaya,
masaya kasi nag-contribute yung mga tao and madaming organizers. Pero, and madaming nagdo-donate. Sobrang dami talaga nagdo-donate. Madaming nagsusupport them. Pero malungkot kasi na-expose yung reality na ganito yung kalagayan, na mahaba yung pumipila. Tapos may naglalakad pa from Cubao and Marikina, ganun. So may need talaga.
Patricia Non ignited the nationwide movement this month after parking a bamboo cart stocked with rice, pasta, canned food and vegetables raided from her kitchen beside a busy street. As contributions flooded in and a few recipients turned into thousands queuing every day, Many lining up as soon as nighttime curfew lifted at 5 a.m. Non's trolley expanded into a distribution center for other pantries. Non's charitable act has inspired others, including police, churches, and the Philippine Coast Guard, to start their own pantries across the archipelago. Photos posted on social media show tables laden with donated food set up on streets, with people wearing masks and clutching reusable shopping bags waiting in line. Some pantries offer free pet food. Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please don't go away.
There is a need for local and national governments to help entrepreneurs and SMEs unleash their potential to make the region sustainable, especially during the COVID crisis. Today, from the regional level, we will hear some of the new and unique ways in assisting the MSMEs and producers in marketing their products and even in improving their competitiveness to suit the new normal, to prepare them to the resurgence of their businesses after COVID-19. As the usual way of doing things is no longer applicable, we will find different approaches to smoothly facilitate how we do business.
As we all know, agriculture has been the only sector that has registered positive growth. We are lucky in the region because we are basically an agricultural region. We have been able to register 94% employment rate. So that's a big accomplishment.
The regional director of TTI, Ms. Leia Pulido Ocampo, will join us in this week's episode of Open for Business.
To Japan now, where this summer's virus-postponed Olympics could be held behind closed doors. That is according to Tokyo 2020 President Seiko Hashimoto, and he told this to AFP, pledging to ensure that the Games will be safe. Former Olympian Hashimoto said the Games could only be a success if organizers completely protect athletes and people in Japan, and that she is hopeful people will be glad the event went ahead. Overseas spectators have already been barred from the Games, and this week a decision on domestic fans was delayed until June, with organizers citing a new wave of infections in Japan. Most people in Japan back either a further delay of the Games or an outright cancellation, and the recent surge in virus cases has prompted a state of emergency in Tokyo and other parts of the country. With the medical system already under pressure, Olympic organizers have been criticized for requesting volunteer medical staff for the Games. Now, Hashimoto said cutting spectators could ease pressure on the medical team or the medical system. And the Games have never been canceled outside of wartime, and organizers have made it clear that they see no possibility of either further delay or a cancellation. In a bid to win public confidence, they have released rule books mandating daily testing for athletes and limiting their movement. But there will be no quarantine required for athletes, and vaccines will not be mandatory. Hashimoto said the rules would continue to be refined, and she felt a big responsibility to show the Games can be held safely.
A Myanmar swimmer has abandoned his dream of competing at the Tokyo Olympics in protest at the junta ruling his homeland, saying until this military government of Senior General Min Aung Hlaing is removed from power, I don't see myself competing under the Myanmar flag. Take a look.
Until
this military government of Senior General Mein Aung Hlaing is removed from power, I don't see myself competing under the Myanmar flag. We're not going to back down. The youth in Myanmar are not going to back down. And we're going to keep struggling until we have freedom, one way or the other.
And in NBA action, Kevin Porter became the youngest NBA player to post a 50-point double-double with assists as last-place Houston Rockets snapped a 5-game losing skid with a 143-136 upset win over the Milwaukee Bucks on Thursday. The 20-year-old finished with 50 points and 11 assists to surpass his previous career best of 30 points. He joined LeBron James, Brandon Jennings, and Devin Booker as the only players to score 50 points in an NBA contest before turning 21. Chris Middleton scored a team-high 33 points, while Jrue Holiday tallied 29 points and 10 assists for Milwaukee, which lost all-star Giannis Antetokounmpo, who left the game after spraining his ankle in the opening quarter. Milwaukee led 76-35 at the halftime despite missing Antetokounmpo, but Porter and Christian Wood set the stage for an explosive third quarter that saw the Rockets go on a 26 surge. Elsewhere, Kevin Durant scored a season-high 42 points and dished out 10 assists as the first-place Brooklyn Nets won their fourth straight game with a 130-113 victory over the Indiana Pacers in Indianapolis. Durant scored 22 points in the third quarter as the Nets closed out the contest with a 17-7 run and improved to 43-20 with a victory at Bankers Life Fieldhouse.
Having fun watching all the sports happening now.
Yeah.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to join us again tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
We'll see you back tomorrow at the end of the day. There remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles and
we live in interesting times.